He Fell in Love with His Wife by 𝙷𝚑𝚊𝚙𝚝. Chapter 7. From Home to the Street. As the shadows of the gloomy March evening deepened, 𝙗𝚘𝚘 lightened the lamp, and was then a little surprised to hear a knock at the door. No presentiment of trouble crossed her mind. She merely thought that one of her neighbors on the lower floors had stepped up to borrow something. "Come in," she cried, as she adjusted the shade on the lamp. A tall, thin, pale woman entered, carrying a child that was partially hidden by a thin shawl, their only outer protection against the chill winds which had been blustering all day. 𝙗𝚘𝚘 looked at the stranger inquiringly and kindly, expecting an appeal for charity. The woman sank into a chair as if exhausted, and fixed her dark, hollow eyes on Mrs. Ostrom. She appeared consumed by a terrible curiosity. 𝙗𝚘𝚘 wondered at the strange chill of apprehension with which she encountered this gaze. It was so intent, so searching, yet so utterly devoid of a trace of goodwill. She began gently, "Can I do anything for you?" For a moment or two longer, there was no response other than the same cold, questioning scrutiny, as if, instead of a sweet-faced woman, something monstrously unnatural was present. At last, in slow, icy utterance, came the words, "So you are her." "Is this woman insane?" thought 𝙗𝚘𝚘. "Why else does she look at me so? Oh, that Wilson would come. I'm sorry for you, my good woman," she began, kindly. "You are laboring under some mistake. My husband—" "Your husband!" exclaimed the stranger, with an indescribable accent of scorn and reproach. "Yes," replied 𝙗𝚘𝚘, with quiet dignity. "My husband will be home soon, and he will protect me. You have no right to enter my rooms and act as you do. If you are sick and in trouble, I and my husband—" "Please tell me, miss, how he became your husband." "By lawful marriage, by my pastor." "We'll soon see how lawful it was," replied the woman with a bitter laugh. "I'd like you to tell me how often a man can be married lawfully." "What do you mean?" cried 𝙗𝚘𝚘, with a sudden flash in her blue eyes. Then, as if reproaching herself, she added kindly, "Pardon me, I see you are not well. You do not realize what you are saying or where you are. Take a seat near the fire, and when Mr. Ostrom comes from his work, he'll take you to your friends." All the while she was speaking, the woman regarded her with a hard, stony gaze, then replied coldly and decisively, "You are wrong, miss." How that title grated on 𝙗𝚘𝚘's ears. "I'm neither insane nor drunk. I do know what I am saying and where I am. You are playing a bold game, or else you have been deceived, and very easily deceived too. They say some women are so eager to be married that they ask no questions, but jump at the first chance. Whether deceived or deceiving, it doesn't matter now. But you and he shall learn that there is a law in the land which will protect an honest woman in her sacred rights. You needn't look so shocked and bewildered. You're not a young, giddy girl, if I may judge from your face. What else could you expect when you took up with a stranger you knew nothing about? Do you know that likeness?" And she drew from her bosom a daguerreotype. 𝙗𝚘𝚘 waved it away as she said indignantly, "I won't believe ill of my husband, "No, miss," interrupted the woman sternly. "You are right for once. You won't indeed believe ill of your husband, but you'll have to believe ill of mine. There's no use of your putting on much airs any longer. No matter how rash and silly you may have been, if you have a spark of honesty, you'll be open to proof. If you and he try to brazen it out, the law will open both your eyes. Look at that likeness. Look at these letters. And I have other proof and witnesses which can't be disputed. The name of the man you are living with is not Wilson Ostrom. His name is Henry Ferguson. I am Mrs. Ferguson, and I have my marriage certificate and— What, are you going to faint? Well, I can wait till you recover until he comes." And she coolly sat down again. 𝙗𝚘𝚘 had glanced at the proofs which the woman had thrust into her hands, then staggered back to a lounge that stood near. She might have fainted, but at that awful moment she heard a familiar step on the stairs. She was facing the door. The terrible stranger sat at one side, with her back toward it. When Ostrom entered, he first saw 𝙗𝚘 looking pale and ill. He hastened toward her, exclaiming, "Why, 𝙗𝚘, dear, what is the matter? You are sick." Instinctively she sprang to his arms, crying, "Oh, thank God you've come! Take away this awful woman." "Yes, Henry Ferguson, it's my very proper you should take me away from a place like this." As the man who had called himself Wilson Ostrom heard that voice, he trembled like an aspen. His clasp of 𝙗𝚘 relaxed, his arms dropped to his side, and as he sank into a chair, covered his face with his hands, he groaned, "Lost." "Found out, you mean," was the woman's reply. Step by step, with horror-stricken eyes, 𝙗𝚘 retreated from the man to whose protection and embrace she had flown. "Then it's true," she said in a hoarse whisper. He was speechless. "You are willfully blind now, miss, if you don't see it's true," was the stranger's biting comment. Paying no heed to her, 𝙗𝚘's eyes rested on the man whom she had believed to be her husband. She took an irresolute step toward him. "Speak, Wilson," she cried. "I gave you my whole faith, and no one shall destroy it but yourself. Speak, explain, show me that there's some horrible mistake." "𝙗𝚘," said the man, lifting his bloodless face, "if you knew all the circumstances—" "She shall know them," half shrieked the woman, as if at last stung to fury. "I see that you both hope to get through this affair with a little high tragedy, then escape and come together again in some other hiding place. As for this creature, she can go where she pleases after hearing the truth. But you, Henry Ferguson, have got to do your duty by me and your child or go to prison. Let me tell you, miss, that this man was also married to me by a minister. I have my certificate and can produce witnesses. There is one little point you'll do well to consider," she continued in bitter sarcasm. "He married me first. I suppose you are not so young and innocent as not to know where this fact places you. He courted and won me as other girls and courted and married. He promised me all that he ever promised you. Then, when I lost my rosy cheeks, when I became sick and feeble from childbearing, he deserted and left me almost penniless. You needn't think that you will have to take my word for this. I've proof enough. And now, Henry Ferguson, I've a few words for you, and then you must take your choice. You can't escape. I and my brother have tracked you here. You can't leave these rooms without going to prison. You'd be taken at the very door. But I give you one more chance. If you promise before God to do your duty by me and your child, I'll forgive as far as a wronged woman can forgive. Neither I nor my brother will take proceedings against you. What this woman will do I don't know. If she prosecutes you, and you are true to me, I'll stand by you. But I won't stand another false step or a false word from you." Ferguson had sunk into his chair again, buried his face in his hands, and sat trembling and speechless. Never for an instant had 𝙗𝚘 taken her eyes from him, and now with a long wailing cry she exclaimed, thank God Mother's dead." This was now her best consolation. She rushed into her bedchamber, and a moment later came out wearing her hat and cloak. Ferguson started up and was about to speak, but she silenced him by a gesture, and her tones were sad and stern as she said, "Mr. Ferguson, from your manner more truly than from this woman I learned the truth. You took advantage of my misfortunes, my sorrow and friendlessness, and deceived me. You know how false are your wife's words about my eagerness to be deceived and married. But you have nothing to fear from me. I shall not prosecute you as you suggest, and I charge you before God to do your duty by your wife and child, and never to speak to me again." Turning, she hastened toward the door. "Where are you going?" Ferguson exclaimed, seeking to intercept her. She waved him off. "I don't know," she replied. "I've no right to be here." And she fled down the stairway and out into the darkness. The child had not wakened. It was well that it had not looked upon such a scene, even in utter ignorance of its meaning.